There are examples of large-scale craziness and meme investing, etc., for which there is simply no parallel in 1929 even, or 2000. 2000 had pet.coms, and they were kind of glorious, but they were scores of millions or a few hundred million. We have crazy things now that are billions, and in some cases, tens of billions. And we were the most impressive speculation, I think. There is nothing like that at scale, even adjusted for current dollars in 1929. And we are down 80%, which is a fairly fearful decline. But along with us, the next tier of speculative stocks also came down. The SPAC index is down over 20%. The market is a self-correcting mechanism, but it's a little wonky in the time it takes. Sometimes it corrects pretty quickly, and sometimes it corrects incredibly slowly. And that's the problem. But if you go back to 2000, which is the previous leader in speculation, let's say, what happened there is the market peaked in March of 2000. And between March and September, the pet.coms basically went out of business. The internet stocks basically went down 80%. But the whole .com, the whole TMT bubble burst, and the industry, which had been 30% of the market, declined by 50%. The S&P was unchanged. And you could have said during that 5-month, 6-month window, oh, isn't that healthy? They're selling the flakiest pet.coms and they're buying Coca-Cola. What's not to like about that? That's exactly what happened. And I like to think of them as the kind of pessimism termites. They ate through the craziest first, and then the junior growth stocks, and then the intermediate growth stocks, and then finally Cisco, which was for 8 minutes or so the biggest company in the world by market cap. And they were all down collectively 50%. The balance of the market was up 17%. So that looked incredibly healthy, but then the termites reached the broad market, and the entire 70% rolled over and fell 50% in 2 years. And the NASDAQ was down 82%. The thing about the underpinnings is they always look terrific. In 1929, the market didn't peak when they thought the underpinnings were terrible. They peaked when the market's enthusiasm for the underpinnings was approximately the highest it had ever been in history.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
In 2000, in March, the world uniformly, including the boss of the Federal Reserve, Alan Greenspan, they all thought the system had never been better. At the top of the housing bubble in 2007, Bernanke and the boys thought the U.S. housing market had never declined, unquote. It merely reflected a strong U.S. economy. The underpinnings were great. They have never gotten it right. The Federal Reserve in particular has never had a clue about asset bubbles. It doesn't even address it. They act as if they don't exist, except on the upside they occasionally take credit for the wealth effect helping the economy along. And it does. There is an income effect, and it does help the economy along. And Greenspan, Bernanke, and Yellen all took credit explicitly for helping the economy along. What they never did is they never took discredit for the reverse side. The market has been reverting mechanism, and eventually it goes back to a fair price. And when it went back in 2001, 2002, it had a dreadful negative income effect. When the housing market collapsed and it took the equity market with it, it had a double-pronged negative effect on the economy. So it had a much bigger impact on the economy than had occurred in 2000. And this time, we're really playing with fire, because this time, unlike 2000, we have an overpriced bond market. Jim Grant would argue the most overpriced in 4,000 years. We have, in my opinion, and that of many other bubble students, the most overpriced U.S. equity market in history. We have a housing market that 3 weeks ago reached the same multiple of median family income as it did in 2006 at the peak of the housing bubble. And we have commodities that have recently run amok, so that the Goldman Sachs index of non-energy, which is food and metals, which are pretty important, have just equaled the peak of 2011, which was said to be one of those super cycle commodity events. So this is the first time we've ever risked 3.5 asset classes bubbling at the same time. If and when we reach a period of pessimism, the potential unraveling in terms of perceived wealth is much greater this time than it will have ever been before.
You quoted Robert Shiller, Nobel Prize-winning economist, about the fact that he said even though his indices are showing the market at extreme valuations, that really compared to the bond market, which as you said is very expensive, stocks don't seem so overpriced. What is your response to those kinds of arguments?
I think the interest rate argument is an explanation of how we get there in behavioral terms. It is not by any stretch of the imagination a justification. You don't justify anything by taking the most overpriced asset in the history of man, the bond market,
right,
and saying compared to that, we are merely very overpriced and therefore relatively cheaper.
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race, you're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dahn, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I intend, how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dahn.